Oscar.
Thank you for staying. Oh, okay. I'm going to start the ball rolling and just ask you a question about how you guys met Ariel Holmes.
I happened upon her. We were doing really extensive research in the Diamond District, doing another film.
For another project that hasn't been made
called
yet.
Uncut Gems that we have yet to realize. And I was deeply in character doing research, selling jewelry, selling fake Rolexes, and very interested in the street scene there on 47th Street. And we would arrive with the morning crowd and leave with the evening crowd. And on my way into the subway one day, I saw Ariel. She was dressed very nicely. And I turned to one of the producers, Sebastian Bear-McLard, and I said to him, wow, that girl's unbelievably beautiful. And he said, all right, go talk to her. Let's get her in the movie. Because we were looking for one of these kind of assistants who works in the showroom. And a lot of people who work in the Diamond District are either like Russian, like almost like mail order Russian types, or family members, or even some strange girlfriends of the owner. So I went up to her and I started talking to her after much persuasion from Sebastian. And I said, hey, we're doing a movie in the Diamond. I was very nervous because it's a very romantic gesture to ask someone to be in the movie, and in a movie. And I said, hey, love to find a role for you in this movie that we're doing in the Diamond District. And she said, oh, I've always kind of thought about acting. I was expecting Russian, and she had this Jersey accent. And she said, okay. We exchanged numbers. And I said, all right, I'll meet you, and we'll talk more about it. We'll find a role. I met up with her a week later, and I turned the corner in my car. At first I said, let's meet in Chinatown. Where do you live? She goes, oh, Chinatown. I said, oh, I used to live in Chinatown. Where? And she said, oh, Essex Street. I said, oh, which street? What's your address? She goes, she's like, guessed a number. And I was like, oh, okay, strange. Pull up. She's dressed completely differently, much more like a street kid, which was a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting it. I was dressed very nicely, dressed to impress, had a lot of jewelry on. I thought she was a Diamond District girl. And she was nodding out a little bit, so I was like, all right, this is strange. She's a junkie, maybe. I'm not sure. And sat down. We had dinner. And halfway, she kept talking to me about Ilya this, Ilya that, as if I knew him. Very cult-like relationship. And halfway through the dinner, she said, hey, Josh, I should admit something to you. I'm homeless. I was like, all right. You're homeless as in you have no home, nowhere to go? She goes, like, yeah, I got nothing, no family. I live in the street. I wash my hair in the public bathroom and then go up to the Diamond District where I apprentice. I said, oh, all right. Let's keep talking. I don't know really what role you have yet. And I was working with her to try to find her jobs because it wasn't paying the Diamond District job. I got her a job with Richard Kern, the photographer who's doing a music video. He loved her. And he said, she's a star. And I said, yeah, I know, you're telling me. And I got her a job. This was about a month and a half, 2 months after I met her, meeting with her and talking with her about her life. And high-paying job, music video. And she didn't show up. Her phone got disconnected. Richard called me. He said, what's up? I said, I don't know. And didn't hear from her for weeks. I thought the worst. And then I got a phone call from a random number. And it was like, hey, Josh, it's Ari. I said, Ari, what the fuck happened, man? I got you this job. I thought you were responsible. You told me you were responsible. I thought you were ambitious, And she said, I know. I'll tell you all about it. Can we meet up? I just got out of the hospital. I said, all right. Met up with her. She had a bandage on her left arm. She said, I tried to kill myself. Ilya made me do it. And I said, well, I hope Ilya's not in the picture anymore. She says, yeah, screw him. He ripped up all my drawings. And then I remember going to LA the next week and trying to do this last push for money for this really tough project that was over budgeted and, Hollywood actors and stuff like that. And a radical thinking friend in LA said to me, I showed him the picture, he said, what are you doing, man? You gotta make that movie. And I said, you're right. Went back, and then I started to commission Ari to write about her life. And these pages were coming in fast. She could write faster than I could read. Doesn't say much, I'm a slow reader, but she blew me away with these writings. They were so immediate and so cinematic, and it amounted to over 160 pages. And then, I would convince Benny and Ronnie, who co-edited and co-wrote.
Ronnie
the film.
Bronstein,
Ronald
our
Bronstein.
beloved projectionist,
Yes.
as well as a great filmmaker in his own right,
Yeah.
and your editor and co-writer. Yep.
Of Frownland, directed the great film Frownland.
Frownland, yeah.
And good friend of ours, and
Star of one of your previous films.
starred in Daddy Longlegs. Father.
Father. All around good guy. Yeah.
He would always say, like, whenever we would see anybody on the street who's talking to themselves or whatever, he just remember that they had a mother once. And I was like, that's not always true. But so these writings kind of immediately grabbed us, and we started mining them, looking for an access point and when we would start, when we would end. And yeah, we started to adapt the pages, and with the intention of always casting Ariel as Harley. Yeah, so.
So let's, John? Yeah.
Okay, question?
Yep. Do some questions?
Questions, raise your hand now.
Yep. Here we go, right there.
Hey, Tom, what's up?
Microphone's on its way.
Hey, Liza.
Hey guys, can you talk about working with Sean Williams and the process of shooting on the streets of New York and stealing shots and permits, and how you were able to capture sort of the immediacy of the streets in the film with your actors?
Well, Sean and I, we worked together on a couple small projects, and he was actually supposed to shoot the Diamond District film. And from the beginning, we developed this. We talked about the movie being an opera of long lens. We always looked at the movie as an opera and wanted to do as much as we could to kind of combat documentary vibe. So no handheld. We shot the whole movie on tripods, which was, I remember there was one like review in Portugal. It's about Daddy Longlegs. It said the review was a picture of a tripod and said, "Safdie brothers, this is a tripod."
This guy too much credit.
No, I know. I give him way too much credit. I hated him at the time, but I paid attention. And so we developed a heavily glassed filter system just to develop this kind of hazed up, drugged up look. And yeah, I mean, we were mixing actors with first-time actors, non-professionals. And those people, you can't really be close with them with the camera because it will freeze them up. And we're never interested in kind of damning the life of the city. And we would have to kind of give space to our actors, and it was actually fortifying for them as well because it forced them to kind of amp up their performance.
And like in every way, like with this subject matter, it would have made sense to shoot it handheld. You're shooting the street, you're shooting the nitty gritty. You got to get in there and be on that level. But that's what we didn't want to do. We were kind of going in the opposite direction. How we made our lives so much harder by doing this, but that kind of forced everybody to raise their level of performance in addition to us. And as for permits, you do need to get permits.
Yeah, with a movie like this, if you don't have permits, you're legally shooting yourself in the foot.
So we were doing a lot of new things. Yes, there's some stolen shots, but for the most part, we had the permits because we had big cameras set up in intersections and medians across the street. And I always think it's so great because for the people walking by, it was real. But for us, it was this heavily hard to get shot. They're this big in the frame.
Yeah, we're shooting 2400 millimeter.
And we're all the way across the street. But there's such a high turnover that everybody walking by adds a new kind of hecticness to the frame because they've never seen these people before. Or maybe they have, and they're just like, oh, they're just having another fight. And they look by, and they'll just keep going, and they'll keep walking. And the whole idea was to kind of not have the camera be the hecticness, but have the city add that sort of vibration.
When it comes to permits, though, when you go for a shot like the one where she's crossing the highway at the end of the movie after she gets kicked off the bus.
That was a stolen shot.
I was going to, okay.
That was a dumb shot, really. That was scary.
Yeah,
That was
highway
not
stuff is
fun of
frightening.
us.
Yeah, that's a scary
She
shot.
ran into the middle of the highway.
Uh-huh.
We had, that was actually like a 15 or 17-minute shot.
Yeah.
And, she said she needed time to get into it, so she really spent a lot of the time just like laying on the side of the highway.
Yeah.
And then she stood up, and we were on Steadicam, so then she just kind of moved into the middle of the highway.
Yeah.
And actually it was, a lot of us screaming like,
Yeah.
stop,
In the
It
sound
was
mix,
that was actually
there
scary.
was a
I
lot
don't.
of deleting of like, watch out.
Yeah, and then actually our father he's, our biggest fan, obviously, and he was running around, like, photographing the whole thing, and Ari, afterwards, she said to me, he goes, who's the crazy guy who got out of his car and was filming the whole thing on his little camera? This is my father.
He happens to be the guy who screams in Italian on the bus as
Yeah.
well. Because
No, but to answer your question in short, ask any cameraman we work with, they'll tell you it's not easy. We push them really hard. Asking someone to shoot a close-up from a block and a half away in New York City, a lot of variables is not, it's not an easy task, and I really take my hat off to them.
From an audience point of view, I just wanted to say that it was a very emotional ride for me. And the soundscape, the sound design of the film really played a huge part in keeping me in my seat when I wanted to bolt out of the theater sometimes, which I think I'd like you to talk a little bit about how the sound design in this worked for you.
Well, I guess we are so far away from the subject with the camera, but with the sound, we want the exact opposite. You want to be right up there with them, so you want to feel that kind of city and you don't want to feel as if you're listening from far away. You want to feel as if you're right in the middle of the action. So those two things kind of work really well together, and it almost comes across effortless.
I think sound is like one of the most immediate, thing. Obviously, light is faster, but sound, it kind of hits you on it's what is it? There's that sonic thing that makes you shit your pants. There's like a direct connection to I don't know, physical
Bodily
emotion.
function.
Yeah. So when we were doing our sound mix, it was something we discussed with the engineer that we always wanted to push it as far as we could go, and because life is very immediate for these characters. It's and that was I'm an audience too. This is you can Daddy Longlegs was a movie, a skewed perspective of our own life, and I'm no longer really interested in my own life anymore. I mean, I am in the sense of what I'm interested in, but we kept wanting to get at this kind of immediacy of these characters, be right there with them, and experience life as it happens. The addiction to drama, obviously,
Yeah, it's funny because there's two kind of set with the Ilya. There's a whole different soundscape than there is with Mike, and that's a conscious decision. Mike's world in the movie is a different world than Ilya. It represents something different. So music really doesn't play a part of that. The sound of the street does. The sound of the voices do, and they take higher precedent there. So
yeah, we always talk about that Mike's character his world is the reality of junkiedom, and Ilya is the romanticized idea of it. Obviously, Ilya is drama, and Mike is this kind of anti-drama, and that was a very difficult thing in the editing process, understanding when to cue in music and when not to. I mean, we use Debussy's music,
Well, through Tomita.
through Tomita, yeah. I mean, that's some of the most romantic music ever written, but then it's through this Japanese wonder, Misao Tomita, who literally it's like Debussy performing on Mars.
when we finished filming, you sent me a clip of Frank Sinatra saying what does Frank Sinatra play when he wants to get romantic? And one of the songs was the Engulfed Cathedral by Debussy, and I was like, wow, could you have two different spectrums there?
Two quick questions. This is a really immersive experience, and it's extremely powerful. I felt I was very curious about these characters, and actually we don't know much about them. There are no flashbacks, only present. There's no past, not to mention the future. And I was wondering if you can talk more about this choice not to include any family members or anything that can give us a hint how did they end up in this situation. And my other question would be, how did Ariel react to the movie after watching it for the first time?
I mean, in terms of the backstory and how these characters got there, and that's another movie. We just were never interested in that. I mean, there is a short answer is she doesn't have any family members, and that's what you see is what you get. And we just weren't interested in seeing how someone arrives or where they are, as we're more interested in how they are,
Well, just
at
the
that
way,
moment.
just the way you even met Ari. It's the fact that when you meet somebody, you didn't know she was
Street
a
kid,
drug
yeah.
addict or a street kid, and then you kind of had to find those things out. And to do that in a movie, I think, is interesting because then everything is kind of suspenseful because you're finding out their flaws or their tics as you get to know them, and it's not like you kind of have a predisposed book beforehand. And I think that just makes it a little bit more exciting.
Even in her writings, she didn't go into
yeah.
her family much.
Well, even the people that she was with, she would just mention a name, I'm like, and I would
There
have to, like, flip
was
back
the
and
Mike
forth.
character. There was in the script something with his mother, but it really felt mawkish and maudlin, and we weren't just. It just didn't feel right. That's the short answer. And in Ariel, when she saw the film for the first time, I would show her. We shot the film, and then we had an ending written, and then we realized the ending was totally wrong, and we said, all right, we'll edit the film, and then we'll figure out what the ending is then. And it took us a little bit longer to edit the movie than we thought, and we had this deal with Ariel. She said, I'll do the movie, but I really want to get off of dope. Put me in rehab. And I was like, all right, we'll do that. But we couldn't send her to rehab and then ask her to come back and act in this world again. So she was here for like a good 4 or 5 months while we were editing. And I would show her things, meet up with her, show her on my phone or some weird scene here and there. So she didn't know the movie in its entirety until she saw the premiere at Venice. And I sat right next to her. And, it was quite surreal. I mean, because she's almost like a different person now. It's strange. I mean, she still has this urge to kind of, give the middle finger to the world. But she said that it gave her, when you sit and you look at, such a grand mirror like this, she really said she was able to see the trappings of that world and how, you don't realize. I mean, in her writing, she would always talk about how much she hates repetition. And Ronnie, myself, and Benny always found it to be so ironic because that life is the most repetitive life you can get. Addiction is the ultimate repetition. And she said she was grateful to see,
Well, and as
that
much
mirror, that reflection.
As much as the movie is from her stories or point of view at times, there is that kind of third perspective that we kind of all, the three of us, developed to look at the world and try and understand it. And I think that's what she kind of was responding to, because in the moment, there was one where she's walking with Mike, and Mike is telling the story, and she said afterwards that story was so different to her now than it was when it happened. And it's because she was kind of watching it from this kind of new, higher perspective, or fourth dimension, or whatever it was. But it wasn't from within, it was from above. And that's special.
But it's a perspective that's drawn from your experience of working with her and the material. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi. I was really struck by the title sequence in the hospital.
Where are you?
Right back here.
Oh.
I was really struck by the title sequence in the hospital, both the decision to omit dialogue from that sequence and also just the way it was choreographed. I'd love to hear you talk about how you executed and came up with that sequence in production and in editing.
There's Don up there. Sorry. It was interesting because we had, access to this closed wing at a hospital. So going into that scenario, something that me, Benny, and Ronnie always talked about is if you can close your eyes and imagine it. I mean, a psych ward has been filmed how many times in a movie? I mean, from Lilith all the way to Girl Interrupted. It's overdone. And we shot a lot, actually, while we were preparing. It took us a full day to get that shot in terms of the art department and the choreography. And we had a lot of, our casting director, Eleanor Hendricks, cast a lot of people from Bellevue. And that's a lot of people. And they were actually informing a lot of the art direction. Like, well, actually, I'm not supposed to be wearing jewelry. So, I tell the art director in production, I was like, you got to be on that. And, the dance, as we called it, it's a 4.5-minute shot, and there's dialogue. We recorded dialogue to it, but there's
us yelling
no, well,
to the people to get, because everything had to happen at the exact right moment. And if it didn't, we had to redo the
Yeah, but we
entire
could have
thing.
included the audio.
Of
there.
course, no, but it's what I'm getting at is that when we're about to leave the room where she's with her roommate, we're yelling, "All right, like doctor, get ready!" outside the other room, so the doctor's
Yeah, but-
ready to go. And
I mean, this is
so,
something that we knew from the get-go, is that we weren't going to have audio used in that. We omit her yelling twice in the movie. It's in the hospital, and then in the bus when the door closes on her and the bus is about to leave. And I don't know. I don't mean to like condescend at all, but I've never had a substance abuse problem. I have other addiction problems, but they're not negative ones. Been around it a lot, growing up, et cetera, et cetera. But when someone's like, in that world, they're screaming so loud, and not one person can hear them. It's really, it's disturbing to me. And actually, that you hear that pitch when she's trying to con Mike into giving her the 4 bags. That tone is such a horrible tone, and omitting it in that moment and replacing it with that synth was something we were very interested in. But that wobble, that haze when you're moving through that hospital. I mean, when we sent the dailies to Ronnie to sync them and stuff, he said that's the best filmmaking you guys have ever done and probably will ever do, and I'm very proud of it. I mean, it only took us 4 or 5 takes.
well, it was
but
supposed to be a daytime.
yeah.
But by the time we were shooting, it was pitch black outside, and I thought it was actually it was a fun experience in the sense that we'd never done anything like that, and just literally if the camera missed the pan ever so slightly, we'd have to we went through the whole thing. We'd have to redo it again and again, and
That should have taken 20 takes, but
yeah.
But the decision to drop the audio out is a practical decision also because it gives you leeway in terms of.
We knew ahead of time that we weren't really going to use it.
Yeah.
We were recording sound, but we knew we weren't going to use it
because
so
their
we were
performances were so good. We're like, well, we have to record it.
Yeah, just to have it. But we knew we'd be screaming out directions to other people because it was a real hospital. So we're in closed rooms and we're using walkie-talkies to try and get people to go where they need to go.
Actually, Sean, the cinematographer, has a little cameo. He said that he kept saying Philippe Garel had a cameo, and I forgot what film.
He's pulling on the nail. And
Yeah.
A cameo.
Well,
Yeah.
he just appears. And
Yeah.
No. The Garel thing, yeah.
No.
No.
Oh, Eustache is an American.
I haven't
friend,
seen
yeah.
the film that Sean was, but he was just saying he really wanted to be seen in the hospital. So he's just pulling on a nail in the hallway.
Yeah. I was curious about whether or not you paid the professional actors and the non-professional actors differently.
Everyone got paid the same money. Everyone was paid the exact. I mean, the actors were the only people who really made money on the movie. That was very important to us, is paying the performers because they deserve it.
And there was no scale. You know what I'm saying? Everybody was treated.
Okay. Just another very brief question. Did you, when you were working with the actors who have substance abuse problems of their own, did you call them junkies to their face?
Going into the film, I had already spent 7 months of hanging out with these people. So everyone who appears in the movie is somebody who I consider a friend. I still hang out with them. I still see them on a somewhat regular basis as much as I can. And they call themselves junkies. They would say to me, junkie life. I mean, they wear these things, as almost as some. This is like there's a movie called Dope Sick Love, where we would always say that's what this movie disappears into, and I sense that your question is a concern question. I'm an exploitation question. These people are my friends, and Ariel, I'm still very much friends with. The kid Ilya, who Caleb's based on, is somebody who I just went to his grandmother's wedding, and I'm not interested in working with people who I wouldn't consider a friend. So I hope that answers your question.
And even regardless of that, like somebody like Maynard, he would be saying the equivalent to us that we would be saying to him. So it was kind of like a two-way street. It was a very open set in that sense. There was no, you could say whatever the hell you wanted, you know.
So actually, a couple questions. One, when was the film shot? Two, what kind of camera did you use? Was it shot on 16 millimeter? And three, just about Caleb Landry Jones's involvement, how he became involved in the project.
We shot in March.
March, and then we finished it in like July was the final shooting. So it's
Yeah.
pretty quick.
What was the second question?
Sony F3
Oh yeah, that was not 16. It was a digital camera, Sony F3
and
log.
and Caleb is Ilya.
Yeah, Caleb Landry Jones. We from the get-go, we knew we wanted to cast an actor in the Ilya role because of his melodramatic nature and his kind of, you immediately know him, and we wanted someone who, in a weird way, you feel like you recognize in like that cult-like way. And I met with a handful of young, I was watching movies I've never seen before. We wanted like a teen heartthrob, and met with a couple of them. We flew a couple out over Christmas to see if they could vibe with Ari, and we never really arrived at the right person there, because we had to. Ariel was as much of a collaborator in this as Ronnie, so we would ask her what she thought of certain people, and it was very difficult, especially for the Scully character who's played by Necro, the rapper. That was like we were shooting somebody else, and then Necro arrived, and we had to cut. But Caleb was suggested by Jennifer Vendetti, who's a casting director, and she said, I think that he will do what you need him to do in terms of immersing himself in this world. And she said that he's kind of a reclusive, eccentric person. And I spoke to his agent, and his agent, painted him out to be even weirder than he was, which I didn't like. I was, but whatever. And then, Caleb immersed himself in the role. I mean, he's very much in love with he fell hard for Ariel in the course of the shooting. And the second he arrived in New York, his agent made us put him up in like a nice hotel, and we were like okay, we'll do that. And then he arrived, he's like, I'm not staying in this hotel, I'm a street kid, I want to know where they're staying. And he went and stayed with them, and then he actually ended up, his hotel room became, everyone from the movie ended up staying in that hotel room.
Because they were like, what are you, crazy? You have this room. You got to stay in the room.
It was kind of beautiful, yeah. But Caleb, Caleb still, he keeps wanting to come to New York.
You said, I remember when the extensions were in, he was like basically on the street for 4 days at some point. You called up his agent and were like, nobody's going to know that it's him. Like all these fans who he has are going to be like, that was Caleb Landry Jones? It's like this is going to be this weird movie that they're going to have for him.
Yeah, and for a study in contrast, everybody should come see Queen and Country by John Borman. It's a different person.
Yeah. And he had a very hard time adjusting. He did Gerardo Naranjo's film right after ours, like literally 48 hours after. And we know the producer, and he called me and he said, he said, yeah, well, you have to understand where he's coming from. He would beg somebody for a cigarette, and we would give it to him, and he wouldn't stop thanking you. And then he's going to this, much different set. And then he had to do Roland Emmerich's film right after that. So he was like, literally, he said he said in the middle of the Emmerich film, he realized like what he had done as Ilya. And he just realized the transformation, and he really messed up his health, I think, doing the movie. Unfortunately, I didn't ask him to do any of that, but he's just a really immersive person.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the rationale was behind the rather nostalgic look of the film, washed out 16 millimeter. Kind of brought me back to the 60s. I don't want to say 50s, but I'd love to understand that. And also, what was the ending you scuttled that you got rid of and for what you gave us?
The ending originally in the script was she continues on the bus down to Florida and gets absorbed into this weird, creepy herpetologist world. He cons her into coming to his place, and then basically she becomes his slave, and it wasn't. she ends up working for him, but it was,
stuck in this other world.
you know, we recognized that we were doing research for this other movie that was about the reptile smuggling world, and we realized it was just kind of a byproduct of our interest in that, and it wasn't right. And most importantly, Ariel hated that ending, and it didn't speak to the truth of her world, which is the cyclical nature, and that, you know, Ilya will always shit on her, and she'll always go running back to Mike, and Mike will always take her no matter what. And because everybody needs each other, just like they need, you know, whatever they've got, whatever drug they're doing. The look of the film, I spoke about that earlier. You know, we were very interested in a hazed up look, something that kind of puts you in that world. Our intention wasn't really to be nostalgic towards anything. I find nostalgia to be, I mean, I don't know.
It's a drug of its own.
Yeah, but I mean, that might just be a byproduct as to our interests and our perspective on things. I mean, we chose a lot of very long lenses. We shot on a camera that was made 3 years ago, and did not
Cell
shoot
phones
16
versus
millimeter. Yeah.
computers.
I mean, but we really, you know, I think that maybe you're responding to the long lens nature of the film, and that's just
Midnight
how
cowboyness of it all.
yeah, that's just how we saw it.
Josh, Benny, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Ken.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.